Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is BJ, this is Brickhouse Builds, and in this video I'm going to show you my process for installing a flexible LED strip into a Cafe Racer rear hoop. Flush mounted, very clean, lots of work, but lots of info ahead, so stick around. Alright, for those of you who have been around for a while, you might have seen me do this same taillight on the CX500 project that I did. So you're pretty familiar with this already, but for those who are new here, what this is a flexible LED strip. Now, it's in the package, I'm not going to bend it too much, but you can bend this around and you can make it fit like a Cafe Racer rear hoop, really nice. But the goal of this video is to make basically a recess or a channel for this to sit within. So basically it's flush mount on the end of the hoop, and it's a pretty complicated thing to make. I've done it before and I'm hoping to do it better this time. And it's going to be a pretty cool project, so definitely stick around. I'm going to try to put a lot of information in here and hopefully you guys can apply that on your project. Alright, so our test subject today, this GL650 I'm working on. So, got a nice hoop on the back, and basically everything else on the bike is finished, and an LED strip flush mounted in here is going to be about the only thing that's going to look right, and that was the plan from the get-go. Now, this light being 8 inches long, it's going to extend over to about there on either side. So the mission is going to be to cut a relief in here and then make a section to slide in that allows that light to fit in flush. So like on the outside, you won't even really feel it. Also on this bike, this is part of the full build playlist, so definitely click above if you haven't seen any of the videos, and you can see what we've been doing to this thing. Got a lot of work done. Alright, so here's the plan thus far. What we're going to do, we're going to use some 14 gauge steel, which is a little bit more resilient, and we're going to make a piece that duplicates the exact dimensions right here, all along the back side. Now that is going to be the piece that this sticks to. Now, once we have that made or cut, then I'm going to go ahead and bend it and match the rear hoop that's on the bike. Okay, so then we're going to have a nice arc. Now, once we have that made, then we can take, this is going to be the challenging part, we're going to use some 16 gauge, which is a little thinner. We're going to bend it around that section we cut, and then we're going to have like a channel that's built on the inside. And then from there we're going to have to hone the inner and outer dimensions that we have like a nice 3/8 inch thick channeled section that you can slide into the hoop once we cut that out. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and just mark out my dimensions of this piece on the steel, cut it out, and we'll start bending it, and I'll be back. Alright, so here we are with the template that we have made here. Now this matches the back of the light. It's just a hair bigger in every direction, and we want that because we're going to have a plate going all the way around this thing. So now what we have to do is go ahead and match the bend of this hoop. So I'm going to go ahead and I have it marked in the center. I'm going to go ahead and clamp it on the hoop here, and then I might take a little bit of heat, might not be necessary, but I'm going to go ahead and just force it and then get it to match the shape as closely as I can. Now it would be different if this was a regular arc, like a regular centerline radius, but whenever I did this hoop, you can tell it's discolored here. I had to heat it up and kind of draw it in a little bit, so it's not going to be an exact arc. So that's why we're just going to form it by hand. Alright, so we've got our piece dialed in now. I originally started, obviously hammering on the outside just to kind of get it close, and then from there, because we're setting it in like 3/8 of an inch, it is going to have a tighter radius. So basically you have to kind of compress the outsides. But we have a matching gap all the way around. And so now the complicated part is going to be to create a template for to duplicate on a sheet metal. Basically what I want is the material to loop around like that versus in like this. So it's going to be easier just to show on a piece of paper, but I'm going to get started. Alright, so I've been playing around with some CAD here, cardboard aided design, and I think I have at least my basic idea of how I want to make the piece of sheet metal here. So obviously here's the piece we made already. Now I need to instead of bending this just flat around like I did the first one, because this is a tighter bend, I worry about the sides. So if this is extending out like that, that means I'd have like a weird, really tight pocket where I couldn't lay this in there whenever I go to install this. So I needed to have, like, instead of an angle like that, I need it to be out like that. So what I'm thinking here, I have this marked at kind of where the bend approximately will start, just kind of squaring everything up. I'm going to go ahead and have to cut it down the middle, just about here. And then I'll take this, I've left a little meat on this side because this end is going to get folded straight up like this. And then they're going to end up joining, and I'll have to trim it and stuff. But I'm going to try to make the template as super exact as I can. And then from there we can go ahead and transfer that. So it's going to end up having like a little V here, and then probably trim a little bit off the sides there. And it's not going to be a perfect looking piece right off the bat, but the idea is that we get a nice folded over section with a seam in the middle. From there we can weld it along this side, and then start grind it back, get it fitting really nice. So I hope that makes sense. I think once I cut this and start holding it down and working on bending it, you guys will see what I'm talking about. So probably just going to time lapse that, and you can see how it's going. Alright, hopefully that kind of translated. So basically what we have here is a Crunchwrap Supreme from Taco Bell. Looking pretty good, making me a little hungry. It's good to go. So we've laid this in here, and it's all kind of approximations. I use a piece of 3/8 inch round bar, which is going to simulate that curve at the end. So that's going to get us pretty close. So I use this as like a bending jig to kind of get it close. So if you notice, I set this piece right here on this horizontal line, and I did that, and I left 3/4 of an inch on the end here because I wanted that to be my minimum. So I was shooting for 3/4 of an inch overlap. We're only going for 3/8. That's how thick the light is. So by me just making this template really big, if I have to, like I can end up like making this piece and welding it, and if I wrap it, you know, too far this way or not far enough this way, like I'll have a little bit of leeway. So as long as I don't bend it, you know, too early, I can move this up a little bit, you know, to meet where that bend starts, and we won't be too bad out of shape. I know last time I did this, I guesstimated my bend the best I could with measurements. Ended up being a little bit too short, so I had to start over. So hopefully, by this being in kind of a V shape, if I just move this forward and back in this plane, I can use the piece regardless. All I have to do is get 2 equal bends going this way, get a nice weld seam, and then we can dial it in from there. Clear as mud. Alright, so a little trimming, doing our best with my little bandsaw here, but we have our template cut in 16 gauge steel. I have my bend lines and critical dimensions marked. So now it's time to go ahead and get my, I'm going to get another piece of steel down here on the bench that I can throw some heat on, clamp this thing down, and go ahead and try to bend this up. So it's going to be a little tricky, but we will get it. If you notice from whenever you saw this thing before, I had a little bit more material drug down here, so I went ahead and cut out the gap in the middle. That way, whenever I'm bending it, I can bend one side at a time and not interfere with this over here. So they'll clear, and once that one's bent, you know, I can still have this clamped in here on the steel piece and not be interfering. So just trying to think ahead on how to actually physically do the bends. Alright, moment of truth. We have the work clamped where we need to. I have the 3/8 inch bar clamped on my bend line. And then now I'm going to go ahead and take the MAPP gas here, heat up this as much as possible, and then just pull this around. So hopefully whenever we fold this thing over, this line right here is going to pretty well line up with the center line there. And then that will be close to the same line on the other side when we bend it. So I'm going to put some gloves on and grab my hammer and get going on this. All right, first bend went really good. Got to throw a lot of heat in there because everything else is trying to absorb the heat where the sheet metal is trying to just dissipate it really quick. So anyway, got that thing pulled as tight as we could and then just kept hammering it along the seam, and it's pretty tight on there. You're not gonna be able to see this really, but it does hold its shape against that bar really well. And up here, we're really good with our line. So that's going to be a weld seam right there. And the better we get it now, the easier it's going to be in the end. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and unclamp this thing, kind of let everything maybe cool down a little bit, and then we'll go ahead and go for the other side. Alright, got this thing folded over. Here's our insert. I have it marked on the back side of it, just to kind of give me my my minimum maximum cut line here. So I just took the cap of the marker, spaced it out, drew around there on both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and start cutting this along the outside. We'll get this kind of excess trimmed off, and then start working on the inside from there. What we'll have is close up this gap a little bit. It's not going to be too bad actually. So once we get the pieces cut, there's going to be a little less tension on it, so we can kind of get it just right. And we'll try to weld it. Progress. Got this thing cut out. I have this cleaned off, getting ready to weld this next. So you can imagine the insert goes in, kind of line it up left to right, and weld that. So it has a nice channel. We're going to trim this back, and then you can see on the back side here, hopefully, there's a little bit of material left over, so I'm going to trim that back to give myself a little bit of material to weld. We'll go weld all the way around. That's going to strengthen it up a lot. Once we get the top done, then we can work on dialing in the width all the way around. Getting there. Seems like a lot of work, and it definitely is. Alright, time to weld. I left myself a little overhang here. I'm going to try to lock in the edges first. Keep for moving around. Alright, so it's the next day and I've been working on getting this piece dialed into the light. So we have a gap basically wherever we want, you know, like we have the correct overhang all the way around, and this thing's cleaned up and it's ready to go ahead and work on inserting into this hoop here. So to do that, I took a square and I'm just trying to mark out, you know, my center, and then marking center on this piece. And then from there, I'm getting my initial mark, my rough cut line, to how far back to cut the hoop. And I'm just going to cut a slit in this thing all the way around. So I'm going to end up just using my my angle grinder, and what I'll do is I'll drill a hole on this side and this side. I'll go ahead and cut the middle out of it, and then from there I can go ahead and just with a hand file, like real slow, open it up a little bit on either side until this thing fits in there exactly how I want it to. So getting the initial cut is going to be pretty quick, but then from there, like an hour with the hand file, just like a little by little, because I want this to have a little bit of tension sliding in, that way it doesn't just fall in the bike for one, but you know, I need to have a nice tight gap going in because I am going to weld this seam, so it's very crucial. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and start drilling and start cutting. Alright, holes are drilled. That's going to get us close. Come over to the other side here. And once we start cutting this out, I'll have to bring this out further because we want to just make little movements at a time. So, time to cut the main slot. Alright, so we are ready to go ahead and install this and weld it. So let me show you how it fits. The radius on the outside here, or the outer radius, just was a little bit off, so I'll show you what we've encountered. We'll get by here. A little tricky to install, but that's okay. Alright, so there we are. So we have a nice tight gap all the way around. You can see the piece is starting to go inward a little bit right here, and then it's got a slight overhang on the edge there, but we're going to make do. I can grind this down a little bit, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and lock in, do a tack weld on the corner here on each side, and then from there I can go ahead and file this down just a little bit more, and then we should have a pretty even overhang. All right, that went okay. We got this thing fully welded. Now it's time to go ahead and just file it down a little bit, just smooth it out a little bit more. This is just a tricky piece. You have to take your time on it. You know, I'm welding on the edge of a piece of sheet metal, so trying to keep the amp steady and, you know, my hand more steady. So came out good though. Good coverage, good fill, and minimal cleanup. So pretty happy with it. All right, so you can see the final product here. Here's our light. We can't obviously adhere this thing on until the frame's done, but I'm gonna sit in here like this. Imagine all the way around. And then our overhang is very, very slim. So, it's gonna look awesome. Compared to the first time, I don't know if I'd say this was easier, because I did have a different method for folding that metal over, or at least at different angles, so I had to make a more elaborate bracket, or a template I should say. And yeah, being that this wasn't like just a regular radius, I don't know. It had its own challenges, but it also, you know, I had the experience of doing it before, and hopefully this video does a little bit better job explaining it than last time. So anyway, yeah, I hope you guys like this one. Hope it has some good tips. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. I know this is probably a lengthy video, but it's just so labor intensive with a lot of information to pack in here for you guys. I know there's limited info out there on how this actually comes out, how you actually do this. So that's what this video is for, in conjunction with the other video I made on it, link above now. But yeah, I hope you guys liked it. I hope you learned something, and maybe it's something you can tackle in your garage. So not something I want to do on every bike, but this bike definitely needed it. You know, having a clean flush mount LED like this, it's just awesome. So anyway, if you want to support Brickhouse Builds even further, I have a tip jar down below, or you can head over to my website, brickhousebuilds.com, and you can pick up like a shirt, hoodie, hat, sticker pack, whatever. Any order like that really goes a long way into helping me just continue to grow the channel and get content out to you guys, and get this information out there. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up now. I really appreciate you guys sticking with it this long, and hope to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.